Good evening. I'm Brad Denton. I have the pleasure of serving on the Executive Committee of the Catoosa County Chamber of Commerce. It's also my honor to be your moderator for this special candidates forum at Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe High School. High school students are involved in their community in various ways. And one of those ways that they're going to be involved in participating with their local government is tonight. They'll be asking questions for candidates for local office here in Fort Oglethorpe. Those three candidates for office are Earl Gray, candidate for mayor, Rhonda James, candidate for city council, and Jim Childs, candidate for city council. Let's meet these dynamic young people and see what they want to know. And what's your name?
My name is Greg Talent. I'm a senior at LFO High School.
Great, Greg. And what's your question for the candidate?
Well, my first question is for Mr. Childs, and my question is, what qualifies you to run for city council? Do you have a political background?
Let me answer the first question first. I've been in Fort Oglethorpe for 42 years. My kids graduated high school here in '89 and '95. As far as a political background, I do not, but the government is a business. I've been in business for 41 years, just retired out of the bacon industry. I've had a restaurant for 21 years, and I was very successful in both.
Thank you. Who has our next question? All right, and what's your name?
My name is Gary Wright. I'm a senior at LFO High School as well.
And Gary, what's your question for the candidate?
The question is, where did your business career begin, sir?
My business career started on a bread route in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1974. Buddy Gertis hired me, and I went through a 3-week interview process because back then it was hard to get a DSD route, which is a direct store delivery. We delivered the stores. So I started there and moved my way up through various jobs. And I was a VP, director of sales. I run half the country with Walmart, dealt with Kroger across the country, dealt with all the big retailers, have a lot of negotiation skills, a lot of team building skills, and a lot of skills to change your mind.
Thank you, sir. Who has our next question? And what's your name?
Dee Hammonds. I'm a senior at LFO High School.
All right, and what's your question for the candidate?
Were you involved in operations or sale?
I was both. Started in sales, and sort of unique in the industry. You got to have a personality to be in sales, and most of our operations people do not have the personalities that most of the sales people do because we can't take no for an answer. And so I was lucky to have those skills, and I equally did both across the country.
Okay, and who has our next question? And what's your name?
Hi, I'm Jacob Todd. I'm a senior at LFO High School, and I was wondering, how long have you lived in Fort Oglethorpe?
42 years. I graduated Lafayette High in '69, went into the Navy, got out of the Navy and moved here in '73. I bought my first house for $9,500 on Winifred Drive, which is just right over the road here.
Okay, who has our next question? And what's your name?
I'm Kinsey Farmer, and I'm a senior at Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe High School. And my question is, what are your hobbies?
Ooh. Well, since I'm retired, I love golf, and I dance competitively with my sister. We teach shag. We used to ballroom and got out of ballroom, got into shag about 5-6 years ago. So I stay pretty active playing golf and dancing.
Okay, and our next question comes from...
Hello, I'm Noah Harris. I'm a junior here at LFO. My question for you is, what are your plans to help Fort Oglethorpe?
My plans are, over the last, I think the last census was 2000, and the last one was 2010. I think we grew 35% population. Over the next 30 years, we're supposed to double in North Georgia, Chattanooga area. So we have to really plan for the future. The council for the last 2 years has done an outstanding job. Now we have to plan for the future, make sure our infrastructure is right as far as, you know, our police department, fire department, schools, roads, jobs, and things of that nature. So we have some planning to do, forward planning.
Now we'll be directing our questions to Mr. Earl Gray, candidate for mayor. Who has our first question?
Okay. Mr. Gray, how long have you lived in Fort Oglethorpe?
I've lived in here for the past 12 years, Jacob. I lived here for 4 years prior to that and moved to Walker County and then come back home to Catoosa County.
Mr. Gray, how long have you been in politics, sir?
I've served on the city council for the last 6 years here in the city.
What have you accomplished during your time in office?
Well, when I ran, we were talking about this earlier, the gentleman that's filming this happened to film my first commercial 7 years ago. And we filmed a lot of it in front of the empty buildings in this city. And we were talking about the commercial that I was doing for this year, and we kind of got to looking at all those empty buildings then that are occupied now. And we've come a long way. We've got a lot of businesses. We've got a lot of new businesses. If you just look at what we've accomplished in the last 5 years and put them all together, somewhere around $260 million in retail sales. So we've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way.
Thank you.
Why do you want to be mayor?
Well, I've been on the council for 8 years. I've had the opportunity to serve under 2 different mayors. And I feel like we need a change here in the city. We need to get a little more aggressive. We need to work closer with our other city that's in Catoosa County, work closer with Catoosa County, and in some cases we have to work with Walker County. So you got to know who your representatives are, you got to know who your people are in the other cities and who the people are in the county. And if you work together, you can get things accomplished, and that's what we need, and that's what we got to have.
Thank you. Okay, our next question.
Yes, sir. What are your plans for our city?
Well, no, I think I covered that in that one, but you know, what you got to do with the cities, you got to continue to grow, and you have to look far enough into the future that, you know, you can't get businesses if you don't have sewer. So we have to look at these outlying areas where there's no sewer, there's no business, and we have to make sure that we've got the infrastructure in there, just like Mr. Childs was talking about, because if they come to our city and look and we don't have sewer available, just as an example, and they go to Ringo and look and they do have sewer available, well, guess where they're going to go? Because it's a requirement that they have to have. So you've got to plan for the future by making sure you've got what they need when they do start looking. And businesses look dependent upon the economy. When the economy's good and it's booming, you know, they're knocking on your door. When it's a little slow like it is now, we have to go knock on their door. And when we go knock, we've got to make sure we've got everything they need in place before we even ask them to consider coming to our town.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for our next question.
Mr. Gray, my question is, how can young people like us help our city?
Good question,
Good question.
Greg. You're helping right now by doing what you're doing. You know, it's hopefully sitting at that table right now is a future mayor of this city. Could be a future senator sitting at that table right there. Maybe even a future president of the United States. You don't know, because right now you're seniors and next year's college and then after college, you know, 20 years from now, you may be standing up here at this podium. The opportunity's there, and certainly you're showing interest in it by being here today. You could be somewhere else. You know, you could be home watching TV or playing video games like other people are doing, but y'all care enough that y'all came out to do this. So you're getting involved the way you need to, and you guys, you know, you can get involved with, there's political rallies when they have other debates, you know, you can go more than what, come to a council meeting anytime. We'd love to have you guys. You know, might even get with your teacher and maybe even give you a little test, but the main thing is you're here, and it's probably voluntary, I don't know that, but you're showing interest by being here today, so you're on the right track. And I applaud you for being here. Good question, Greg.
Great question. Okay, next question.
What is the first thing you plan on doing if you become mayor?
Well, I don't know that you can have a first thing list, because this city has grown so much. When I first ran for the council, we were operating on just a little over $8.5 million budget. Our 2016 budget's a little over $14 million. So when you grow, when you get these businesses that I was bragging about, you also have to grow your services, because you have to be able to take care of them. You got to add to your police department. You got to add to your fire department. With growth comes a lot. Just because you see it growing out here in the city, sometimes it's growing pains for the internal working parts of the city, because you got to provide for them. There's more to it than just saying, we want to get Cabela's here, and Cabela's comes and it's over with. Well, when Cabela's and Costco came, we had to pretty much double the patrolling we were doing with our police department prior to it just being an empty hillside out there. So you start looking at the internal workings of the city, and sometimes you have to prioritize. We just done a big, huge water project over on Cross Street. If any of y'all's been down through there over the summer, I'm sure you got caught in some of the delays. Well, that had to be done because there was pipes over there in that ground that had been in there for 75 years. So needless to say, they were deteriorating, and we had some leaks. So a lot of times Mother Nature or other things will determine what's the top priority. So it's kind of hard to say, I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and this. It's not like a grocery list, because it changes every month. We had to spend close to $500,000 last year. It wasn't in our budget because the lights at our ball fields were falling down. So we had to amend the budget and come up with that money, and we managed to come up with it through the course of the year and still wind up at the end of the year with about 4% reserves. There's not too many cities that can do that. Most cities probably would have had to borrow that money. But we're fortunate enough, and we've had some good people on the council, and we've got a good city manager, and we're kind of stingy with our funds. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation if we have an emergency, we've got to go borrow money to get out of it. So that's probably not a real good answer to your question, but it's kind of hard to prioritize what's going to happen on any given day in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Okay, who has our next question?
We have a few questions for Ms. James now.
Okay, Ms.
Thank
James,
you.
if you'll come forward. Okay, Ms. James, we are ready for our first question for you.
Yes, Miss James. How long have you lived in Fort Oglethorpe, and where did you go to high school?
I have lived in Fort Oglethorpe for the past 16 years. I graduated from Lakeview in 1975, and we made the conscious decision to come back, stay in Fort Oglethorpe. Been around the Chattanooga and Fort Oglethorpe, North Georgia area all my life, but I've been here living in Fort Oglethorpe in the city for the past 16 years.
Okay, next question.
Yes, ma'am. Why are you seeking a seat on the city council?
The reason I'm seeking a seat on the city council is because just what we talked about. I'm passionate about Fort Oglethorpe. I graduated from Fort Oglethorpe many years ago. I chose to come back here and live, and I want to do the right thing for the city. I want to get involved with the city. I want to get involved in the community. We're community volunteers, my husband and I are, and what I want to do is make the best, well-informed decisions that I can for the citizens of Fort Oglethorpe. And by doing that, being a council member, I can help do that.
Thank you. Okay, and our next question.
What makes you the best candidate for city council?
What makes me the best candidate is looking at my background, looking at my work background, and looking at my educational background. I work as the Chief Financial Officer for a local utility company. We have electric, we have natural gas, we have water, we have wastewater, sewer, and we have telecommunications. I have been in this for right at 15 years. Before that, I was in manufacturing, so I've spent my entire work life in the business area. And like I say, I'm the Chief Financial Officer, which comes to look at the budget, it looks at the spending. I know we've talked some about that today. and you have to keep an eye on everything. When I worked as the CFO, we have a budget that we go by every year, and we have assets, plant assets, fixed assets of over $1 billion. But now we're doing that right now with no debt. And that's unheard of in the utility industry. If you look at all the utilities in Georgia, North Georgia, and around the southern area, you'll see that most of them do have debt. And we're doing that without debt.
Great, thank you. Okay, and here's our next question.
Ms. James, if you would, please list the top 3 core responsibilities of a city council member.
To me, the top 3 are, number 1, concern and care for the citizens. That's your number 1 thing. You have to have the heart of a servant. You have to be there to serve the citizens and do what's best for them. Number 2 would be commitment. Commitment, a definition of commitment is being devoted to a cause. And that's something that you want to do. You want to be devoted to the cause, making Fort Oglethorpe better, doing what's better for the citizens. And the third reason would be, the core responsibility would be going out to see what the citizens need, to see what the city needs, to work with the members of the council, to work with the mayor, and do what's best for what the whole city needs, not just a few, but for all.
Thank you.
How will you attract economic development and other avenues of city growth?
Well, first I'm going to change that around, Dee, just a little bit, and I'm going to say, instead of economic development, I'm going to call it economic revitalization. We need to revitalize what we've got. We've done, as Mr. Gray said, we've done a great job working in this city, going through and revitalizing. We've got new businesses, we've got growth. But we've got a gym sitting right down here, right down the road. We've got our Chickamauga Park, which is on the edge of Fort Oglethorpe. We've got the 6th Cavalry Museum. We've got so many things, so many historic facts that a lot of us don't know about. When you start studying Fort Oglethorpe and its history, you'll find out that there's so many things that people aren't aware that happened here, and not too many years ago. It was back in the 40s when Fort Oglethorpe was established, and not many people know that, and they don't realize what history is here at the post, at the polo field. Most of you know it by the polo field. But there's so much history that will attract people and bring people into this area. We've got growth. We've got the new Cabela's, like he mentioned, and the Costco, which is great. It's right off the freeway, and we want to draw those people down to A. We don't want them to stay at that end at 75. We want them to come into Fort Oglethorpe. And like I say, that gym is sitting right down the road from us, and it will draw them in. We have hotels. We have restaurants. We have some of the best places around for people to shop, and we want to bring them in and pull them in with that history.
Thank you for that. Okay. All right, next question.
Ms. James, could you name a person in government that you admire and why?
Okay, the one person, I can name several, but the one that quickly comes to mind for me is Condoleezza Rice. I don't know if many of you know much about her. She was in government. She was Secretary of State. And then she decided to retire from politics. She gave it up. But when she gave it up to go back into education. And I think to her, education is number 1, and I admire her for giving up her position in politics and going back to education, because as you know, that's the most important thing for you guys right now. You're in high school, you need to go on to college, you need to get your education, because that's going to help you in your job life when you go out and look for a job. Anything you do educational wise is wonderful.
Stay with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Uh-oh, Dad's gonna be mad.
If you find yourself in need of an attorney, call the law offices of Robert L. Stoltz. From auto crashes to forming a corporation, attorney Robert L. Stoltz can help you through some of life's ups and downs. Call him at 858-0023 or visit his offices at 376 Cloud Springs Road, Fort Oglethorpe.
State Line Roofing and Home Improvement has been serving citizens in the tri-state area over a decade for both home and commercial construction, replacement, and repairs. Wayne Chapman has established an honorable reputation with credible references who will confirm the quality of his work. Give Wayne a call at 423-243-8590 for a free estimate consultation. State Line Roofing and Home Improvement encourages all students to invest their time in STEM programs through their local schools and colleges.
Welcome back to Solutions for Success. Now we have all the candidates at the podium, so we have some additional questions for each of those candidates, and we'll start down here on the end and ask those questions now.
Yes, Mr. Gray, what is your opinion on how a raise in minimum wage will affect our local businesses?
Well, certainly with large businesses, it's not going to have a real big effect on them, and I think the proof there is what Walmart is doing. Walmart has seen that to not only recruit good people, but to keep good people, you've got to pay them more than minimum wage. And certainly I would like to see, if at all possible, minimum wage go to $10 an hour. But there's also a negative effect to that, because a lot of your small businesses, I mean, it would put them out of business. And certainly the minimum wage being as low as it is, I mean, you guys working part-time and going to school, and you know, if you can get 20 hours in maybe at a Sonic or a McDonald's or something, there's a need for that in this country, not only in this city, but in this country, because you guys need to be able to go somewhere and go to work for 15 or 20 hours a week to make you a little spending money. And certainly only working the 15 or 20 hours a week, especially at your age, you're not going to be able to work at a Shaw Industry or a Roper or anything like that, because they require 8-hour days, 40-hour weeks. So we need that for people to have part-time jobs. But if you could raise it, I think if you raise that up, you're going to see the pay raise at a Volkswagen and a Roper and some of those other skilled positions. I think you're going to see it increase there too. But you know, minimum wage has been and always will be a hot topic. And you start looking all across the United States, and you know, let's just say McDonald's went to $10 an hour right now. Well, your Big Mac meal that you're getting for $6.99 over there now would probably go to $10.99. So what would that do to their business? It's probably going to slow it down. So you have to be careful about raising it too fast, too quick, because you can bring the whole economy down. But certainly as inflation goes, then the minimum wage, in my opinion, needs to be adjusted the same as inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Okay. More questions?
Yes, sir. My question is for all the candidates. How could each of you help the economic development in Fort Oglethorpe?
Good question, Gary. I've been in business for 43 years, and my job was to go into new markets. So we can recruit businesses, and as Mr. Gray said, the infrastructure has to be there too, because if it's not, then we're not going to get any. So we as candidates have to be schooled, keep up with the companies that are growing, and something that we would want here in our city. And of course, we all would agree upon that. I would hope that's consensus. So that would be mine. We would really have to research it out and see what it is and make sure that our infrastructure was there so that we could help the company that comes in. Because anybody that comes in our city, we really want them to grow. We want them to be happy. We want them to make money. And we want jobs for our citizens. Did I answer it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Childs.
Okay,
Ms.
I'm
James.
going to use something that you guys may have heard before from elementary school. Team. Together, everyone achieves more. And that's the first thing we need to think about, like Mr. Childs was saying. We need to work together. We need to bring the people together and see what fits best for the economy in this area, and then grow that, add jobs. So you guys will have a job when you get out of college and you want to come back here and you want to stay and you want to live.
Thank you, Ms. James. And Mr. Gray?
I'm going to give you a simple answer to this. I gave you kind of a technical one there. We have a downtown development authority here in our city. Ringo has a development authority in their city with a economic development director. The county has an economic development board. At no time has all three of these gotten together and sat down and said, what can we as a group do for our county? You know, this city is in Catoosa County. So anything we can do to help Catoosa County, to help Ringo, it's going to help us. So if you get good people in the council and you've got a good, strong mayor, you can make those negotiations happen. And certainly we're stronger as a group as we are as individuals, you know, and we have to put aside the, well, we want it in Fort Oglethorpe, well, we want it in Ringo. Well, let's work together and let's get it in Catoosa County because it's going to help everybody. So that's one thing we've got to do. We've got to establish better working relationships with the county, with the city of Ringo, and hey, we even got to get over in Walker County. You know, I don't know whether y'all realize it or not, but part of our city limits is actually in Walker County. So we got to work with Walker County too. You know, the big development that they just had in Walker County down there in their new industrial park. I talked to 3 of those people about 2 weeks ago at a chamber meeting. And they all 3 moved in here from out of town. They're all 3 executives. Guess where they all 3 bought houses at? Catoosa County. So growth in Walker County can also help us here in the city and in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
As a student at Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe, I'd like to ask each of the candidates to briefly comment on the state of Catoosa County Public Schools.
Okay, Mr. Childs.
I pulled that up about a month ago, well, a little longer than that, okay? I think Georgia is ranked 6th or in the top 15 in poverty or low education, not very well. And I think one of the better counties in Georgia is Catoosa County. I think I'm stating that correct. Catoosa has done a little bit better job than most of the rural counties in Georgia. You know, I think our population in Georgia is a little over 11 million, maybe 12. Well, about 9 million in Atlanta. Then I think the second largest city we have, I think, is Augusta. It could have changed. It was. So, you know, we're up here close to Chattanooga, but we're growing. And the superintendent and the teachers here in the Catoosa County area have done a very good job.
Thank you, Mr. Childs. Ms. James?
Talking about education, as you know, what makes education special are teachers. Teachers here are great. Like I say, I was here many, many years ago. We had wonderful teachers then. You have great teachers now that are dedicated, that are committed to every one of the students here. And I've seen that over the years, day in and day out. They give of themselves, they give of their own funds to help the students. And I think it's very special that you have teachers like that. And like I said a while ago, we were talking about education. Education is key, and to be able to teach and to come back to the students, come back to this area, you've got to get your education and come back in here.
Thank you, Ms. James. Mr. Gray?
Thank you. Did that Jacob ask that question? Good. I'm glad you asked it. You led me into an opening here that it's good when a candidate can, somebody lead him right into something he wants to talk about without him having to open it. Are you guys familiar with something called eSPLOS? Anybody familiar with that? What that is a 1 cent sales tax that is added on to the sales tax here in the city, the county. That 1% goes to Catoosa County schools. That's going to be on the ballot next March. I don't know if y'all are aware of it. There was a meeting at the Colonnade this past week, a public meeting to discuss this. And I'm pretty fortunate in what I do. I get to work real close with the schools. I got a teacher that works in Walker, got a wife that teaches in Walker County, and I get to work a lot with Walker County schools, and I work a lot with Hamilton County schools. Catoosa County schools are the best schools in this area. I'm just going to tell you that. And it's because you got great leaders. You got a great principal here. You got a great principal at Heritage High School. You got a great principal at Ringo High School that graduated right here. Sure y'all probably familiar with. And the majority of them are, and of course I'm speaking about J.R. Jones. You know, it's hard to imagine that, 10, 12 years ago, 15, whatever, I don't know exactly what year he graduated. I should, because I refereed when he played basketball. But it hadn't been that long that he was sitting at that table you're sitting at. Now he's the principal at Ringo High School. The same thing can happen with anybody sitting at that table right there. But the eSplosh is something that it's always a real hot topic, and y'all can do a little research on it. And it's passed the last 2 times. It stays on for a 5-year period, and like I said, it'll come up again in March. Every bit of that 1%, and a lot of people says, well, that's not a whole lot of money. And it's not a whole lot of money when you go in and buy a gallon of milk and, you know, you're paying 7-cent sales tax and you don't really think about where it goes. But that particular 1% can't be used for anything but these schools in Catoosa County. That's one revenue source that cannot be used for anything else. And at that forum, they laid out a plan on what they plan to do with the projected money that they're going to get. This gym and this new cafeteria that y'all got here at Lakeview High School, y'all know where it came from? Came from eSplosh dollars. That's what built that new gym. That's what done that remodeling in that cafeteria. It all came out of that. So y'all participating today, you're getting another feeling, another little old touch of government. Some of the things that we have to do, we need to make sure people understand what that goes for. Because as you get older, you're going to become some of the older ones says, we don't want no more taxes. We don't want no more taxes. Well, you got to have taxes to have new gyms. You got to have taxes to have new football stadiums. You got to have taxes when something as bad as that tornado comes through and you have to rebuild like Ringo High School did. You got to have that money. But the final answer is I'll put Catoosa County schools up against any of them in this area, any of them in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. All right, next question.
I'd like to ask each candidate for one improvement that you will commit to completing during your first year of service.
Mr. Childs?
D, that was one improvement
That you will commit to completing during
to
your
be
first
completed in the first year? Okay. Well, Mr. Gray talked about it, and I'm going to reiterate it. We are a county. There's 2 cities in this county, and we're both growing. So teamwork is a big thing. We have to come together as a team, because anything in this county helps us too with revenue, whether it's in Ringo, whether it's in Fort Oglethorpe. So my answer would be let's work as a team, as a county team, and get everybody involved that needs to be.
Thank you, Mr. Childs. Ms. James?
D, what I'd like to see for the first year is for the council members and the mayor to sit down and look at our roads, look at our infrastructure, and work out a plan. And I know they have development agencies that do that, but have the council members and the mayor included in this and do a workshop and maybe sit down and see what the needs are and try to accomplish that and get a plan set in place. It may take 5 years, it may take 15 years to accomplish everything, but if you've got a plan, you can go through that plan and you can mark off things as they come. And then if you have emergencies, you're going to have emergency contingency money set aside for that. But you can also go into those plans, like I say, you can knock those off one at a time, but you've got to have a starting place for that.
Thank you, Ms. James. And Mr. Gray?
Well, the key, I guess, that you asked was the first improvement. And probably the single out one thing is going to be the roads here in our city. And it's not just a city problem, it's a county problem and it's a state problem. And here again, we seem to be coming back to this old dirty word of taxes. The state of Georgia just redid their whole tax structure on how they get money for roads. At one point, we would get 80% from the state and we would fund 20%. Well, that's gone away. They have implemented what is called a gasoline tax now. The tax is on the gasoline, and then the counties gets a certain percentage of that, and they pretty well tell us where we can use it and what roads we can use it on. So we're probably going to have to come up with a way in our budget, and it's probably hard to do it next year, but we've got some road work we're going to have to do in this city, whether we're getting help from the state or whether we're not. So that's probably going to be one of the top priorities. We can't pave them all, and you got to start with the ones that's most heavily traveled. And the most heavily traveled ones don't have a lot of homes on it, so the ones that you hear the complaining from is the ones where the home's at, because they're driving on it every day. But the state makes you do it by traffic count. But we're going to have some road improvements in our city. They've gone too long without any. We don't have a local asphalt plant here anymore. We used to go to Rossville and get our asphalt. Now we have to go to South Pittsburgh to get it. So a lot of things have changed, and we haven't really changed our plan about our repaving, and even if we have to do it a section at a time, next year we're going to have to come up with a plan and a program. We're going to have to get these streets paved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. All right, next question.
This is for each of you, and what is your most important concern facing Fort Oglethorpe as of now?
Okay, Mr. Childs, you'd like to go first?
This election. That was a good question.
Pretty good answer.
It's this election. The people need to get out and vote and make sure that they choose the right people so that they can lead this city and make all the changes necessary and decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Childs. Ms. James?
Money, money, money. Being a CFO, of course, that's one of the first things I would think about. But you've got to have the money. You've got to have the money coming in, like Mr. Gray said. We've got to sit down and look at what we've got coming in, and we've got to know what's going out. And we've got to make sure that we spend the money right for what's best for the citizens, what's best for the area, what's best to bring economic development into this area. So you have to worry about that. Bottom line, you've got to, money coming in has to be more than money going out. So you've got to make sure that you've got the money to do what you need to do to grow the city.
Thank you, Ms. James. And Mr. Gray?
I'm going to treat this one just like y'all would one of those questions on your test. You know, you got an A answer, a B answer, a C answer, and a D answer, and D is usually all the above. My answer is D because all the above applies here. You certainly have to have the money. This election is probably one of the most important elections that we've had in this city in a long time. There's a big election going on in Ringo. A lot of people don't realize, but there's a mayor and 3 council seats up in Ringo. There's a mayor and 3 council seats up here in the city of Fort Oglethorpe. Next year, you're going to have a chairman and 2 commission seats up in Catoosa County. So this election and next year's election could be a complete shift in the faces that you see that's running your government in all of Catoosa County. You know, the 3 of us feel like we're the ones to carry it into 2016, and I think we are. Because you got to have strong leadership, and I think you guys can probably tell by our answers that we think a lot alike. You know, a lot of people says that's a bad thing. Well, to me, that's a good thing. You know, people say, well, if you go in there and you've all the time got 5-0 votes, y'all just a clique. Well, to me, that's not a clique. You know, to me, that's 5 people that's working together, that's making the best decisions for this city. Now, it's not always going to be 5-0. I'm not always going to agree with Mr. Childs. I'm not always going to agree with Miss James. As the mayor, I don't get to vote, but they're not going to agree all the time. Miss Stennett's not going to agree all the time. And that's the beauty of government and having 5 people so you can sit down and voice your opinion and get an opinion from somebody that's experienced in education. Get an opinion from somebody that's experienced at running his own business. Get an opinion from a lady that can read your budget line item by line item, backwards and forwards, and explain it to you when you don't know what it means. So the election, this election is very important. And I guess the one thing that I want to stress is, you know, hear a lot of people, and even y'all as young as y'all had, how many times have you heard an adult say, well, my vote don't count, or I'm not going to vote because it don't matter? Well, it does matter. We had a county commissioner lose his seat at the last election here in Catoosa County by 2 votes. 2 votes. So yes, your vote does make a difference. And what you guys could really do to help us was tell every adult that you see how much you enjoyed this and say, please, if you don't do anything else, say, please go vote. Put the pressure on them. Put the pressure on your mom and dad. If you got an older sibling that's registered to vote, put the pressure on them. Say, hey, this is important. Y'all need to go vote. Because I'm sure when y'all get 18, I would say everyone sitting at that table will be at the polls every time they're open. And you should. We have men and women that fought and died for that right. And you guys are probably going to be kind of unique in the fact that you're here today. And I would say that all 6 of y'all, when y'all go register to vote, you probably won't miss one. You'll probably vote every time. And that's what the citizens of this city needs to do. We've got to go vote. Thank you.
We hope you're enjoying this exceptional group of young people in their question and answer session. We're going to pause for a short commercial break for a word from some businesses that care about you, so stay tuned to Solutions of Success.
State Line Roofing and Home Improvement has been serving citizens in the tri-state area over a decade for both home and commercial construction, replacement, and repairs. Wayne Chapman has established an honorable reputation with credible references who will confirm the quality of his work. Give Wayne a call at 423-243-8590 for a free estimate consultation. State Line Roofing and Home Improvement encourages all students to invest their time in STEM programs through their local schools and colleges.
We've got a few more questions for the candidates, so we'll come over to our panel and get ready for those. Who's up next? All right.
My question is for all 3 of the candidates, and my question is, if you are elected, what will you do to help improve the overall standard of living for citizens of Fort Oglethorpe?
Greg, you said the quality, help the quality for the citizens. One, integrity is a big part of my life. It's been probably the #1 thing in my life other than my family. So being honest, communicate with them, let them know what's going on. If we have an issue or something coming up, it's our job to make sure that not only the council knows it and the mayor and the city manager, but everybody in our community that votes. Mr. Gray spoke earlier about voting. Well, voting is a privilege, and people do need to vote. So people that vote want to know what's going on. So it's our job to make sure that we keep them informed on everything. And I guess communication would be my answer, is to keep them informed on what's going on.
I'll follow Mr. Childs by saying the same thing, communicate. We need to get out into the houses and talk to people, talk to the citizens, what they feel is important to this area, and then come back and, like we've said before, work together as a team. The only way that we're going to be able to accomplish these things is if we do work together and we think about what we need, we do what's best for every citizen of Fort Oglethorpe.
I had a lady tell me last week if we could get a Target and a Red Lobster here, she'd never have to go to Chattanooga again. So Target and a Red Lobster would improve hers to a great extent, I guess. But I kind of look at the extracurricular things that we do. Our walking trails, for example, you can't go anywhere unless you go all the way to Chattanooga to the river park maybe. And even there, mileage-wise, we're pretty comparable to them. We've come a long way with our canoe launch. That's something that's becoming real popular. We've got a good youth program. You know, when you talk about quality of life, you usually think about families, and we got to make sure we got something to keep those families occupied, especially the younger people. And you start looking at what there is to do here, so you don't have to go to Chattanooga to do it. You know, we've got a lot of recreational things, but I think we've got a gym that we've got to get developed. I mean, it's been sitting there empty too long. And, you know, that would add, especially in the winter time, because, you know, right now, even our youth basketballs, they have to practice in the church gym, have to play all of our games away because we don't have one. So that's one thing I think we've got the building. We've got a little SPLOST money. That's a separate one from the eSPLOST that we talked about earlier, that hopefully next year we're going to be able to use on that. So I think if we can just keep improving on anything we've got to do that's outdoors and recreational, I think that will improve the quality of life a lot. We've got the businesses, so now we've got to concentrate on the family. Thank you.
Ready for our next question?
Yes, my question is for Mr. James. How do you see the future of our local hospitals and medical businesses such as Hutchinson?
Good question.
Noah, that's a great question, and I know it's on everybody's mind. I know it's on my mind. Just yesterday I talked to a friend of mine, and he was laid off from Hutchinson. He says there's not a lot of things out there, but he's, of course, looking for a job right now. But it hurts the community. It hurts the community for not only jobs, but for medical care. Like we talked about before, we want to keep people in this area. We've got to get people that will come to this and get investors to either invest in Hutchinson and keep it going, or invest in some other way to keep medical doctors in this area, because we don't want to have to go to Chattanooga, to Erlanger, or to Park Ridge, or to Memorial. Those are great hospitals, but we need something in our area, like we talked about, keeping you guys in this area. We want you to go to college, but then we want you to come back, and we want you to go to work here. And like I say, if we get some investors to keep Hutchinson going, it's going to take a lot of money, and I realize that, but that's one thing that we need to work on. All of us as a community need to work together to get that going, because if we don't, we're going to lose a lot of talent in those people, because they're going to go out of this community to find jobs. Like I say, they're doing layoffs just as we speak, and it's very difficult, but they have to support their families. So it would be, the first thing would be to get some investors to come in here and buy it out so we can keep it going. We want to keep that going as much as possible.
Next question.
Yes, this question is to Mr. Gray. What is your position on having bars and liquor stores open up in Fort O? Why or why not?
Well, fortunately, we have 2 ordinances in our charter now that's going to prohibit any of that, so it's never going to happen. And as long as I'm involved on the council or the mayor, I would never vote for it to happen. The restaurants we have that serve alcohol now, the largest percentage of their sales has to be food. We don't have anywhere you can just go in and sit down and drink. If you sit down and order something to drink, you got to order food with it. And we're going to continue down that path. You know, we're certainly not ready for liquor stores, and we don't need any bars. And as long as I'm involved in this city, we won't have either one of them. Thank you.
All right, next question.
I have a question for Mrs. James. How will you help Fort Oglethorpe with your financial knowledge?
That's a great question. Like I said before, I've been doing business for over 40 years now. I have a BS degree in accounting from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and I've been fortunate to work with a large company like I do that has a lot of assets and fortunately no debt. So what I would like to do for Fort Oglethorpe is, like Mr. Gray said, is go through the budget, see what we've got, see what we need to have done in the next few years, and sit down and work out a plan for that and take those investments where we need to go. If we need to go out and we need to do some bond offerings, we need to borrow some money, that's what we need to do. But we need to look at each and every item that we do and make sure we're doing what's best and what can get the most bang for our buck.
All right, next question.
My question is for Mr. Childs. Do you see Fort Oglethorpe attracting high-tech jobs for STEM careers?
That's a good question, Dee. I think Chattanooga, which is in our area, has the fastest internet in the world, correct? I'm pretty sure that's true. So apparently we have some smart people in the area, and we're just right across the border from them. I would hope, as we double in population, since it says we will in the next 30, 35 years, I think this is a great community to attract people, the kind of people that need to come. The engineers, the scientists, down the road we got the Space Center in Huntsville, so You know, it's 2 hours away, so I think this would be a very good place for it.
All right, next question.
My question is for Mr. Gray, and it is, are we going to add more outdoor venues that attract young people and their families?
Well, we certainly need to. Labor Day at the Post came back this year after a 5-year absence from our city. The reenactment, the weather got the fireworks. Let me tell you where I think we need that we're missing the boat, not just as a city but as a county. And I've expressed this to the county many times. We've got an amphitheater down at the Colonnade that is, I can count on one hand just about how many times it's been used since it was built. We're going to have to bridge that gap, do some improvements. You know, even if we have to come up with some money to go with the county, maybe a joint effort between us and Ringo and Catoosa County, that thing needs to be used, and it would be ideal for what you're talking about. It, you know, could be concerts. You know, Lake Winnie used to have concerts, and it kind of seems like they've gone away at their outside theater. So we've got an outlet at the Colonnade, and I think if we would concentrate on that would be one of the best places to start. You know, because not everybody likes to walk. Not everybody likes to ride a bike in the park. So something with, you know, we did bring the movie night back. Unfortunately, it's geared more towards smaller children than it is teenagers. I don't know if we can change that. But I think the amphitheater is where we need to concentrate our efforts at, because then, you know, we can maybe pick groups that you like, maybe even participants through the drama or things at these local high schools where they could perform out there, where you could actually have a nice outdoor event, have tailgating. And I think that's probably there that we need to look at for outdoor events for teenagers.
All right, one more question.
My question is for all three of the candidates, and it is, why should the citizens vote for you?
I guess that's the reason I'm running, Greg. Why should they vote for me? I have extensive knowledge in business. I have integrity. I am a team player. I have a restaurant that I run that I hire a lot of young people, as we talked about earlier, that need a part-time job. And they have to learn, and I teach them about food cost, what labor is, what insurance is, what taxes is, a little bit of everything, because you're sitting back there cooking and you're dressing, and you know, you have a lot of time to discuss things, especially with young people like yourselves. You're here wanting to learn about life in general when you get out of school, and that's what it's about, because you have to go to work in a field or something. So I have the knowledge. I think I'm a people's person too. I'm not too shy. But I do have a lot of extensive knowledge in business, and I'm an honest and fair person.
I'll quote who I talked about before, Condoleezza Rice. She said, diversity should be a strength, not a handicap. I have a very diverse background. I plan to work for the citizens. I'm committed, I'm passionate, and I'm dedicated. I am an honest person, and I also want to do what's right. I've always been raised by my parents to do the right thing for the right reasons, and it always works out that way. And like I said, I have a very diversified background. I worked in manufacturing, I've worked in business all my career. I have municipality background, I have utility background, I have telecommunications background. So I have a diversified enough background in education where I feel I could do the best job. Plus, I want to make, like I said, informed decisions, make the best decisions for Fort Oglethorpe, for the citizens. I want to do my own research. I want to make sure that I have seen what is going on. I want to make sure that the decisions that I make, that I have checked those out for myself, that I don't rely on the research of others, that I want to have the integrity of my own decision, my own person, and do what's right for the citizens. I'm committed to work with, I'm committed to work for the citizens. I have the heart of servitude, and I want to be able to serve those citizens in the right way and do the right thing for the city of Fort Oglethorpe.
Well, I've been honored to serve on the city council here in this great town of ours for 6 years. And during those 6 years, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people. I've gotten to work with other governments in this surrounding area. I've got to know our state legislators, our state senators. I've got to know the people that can help you in Atlanta. And unfortunately, a lot of the small town business has to go through the big town in Atlanta. And if you don't stay in touch with them, they kind of tend to forget about North Georgia. They want to keep everything in Atlanta. And we got to make sure we get our share. During my 6 years, we've had some peaks and we've had some valleys. And the valleys is what I want to eliminate. You know, you can't stay on top of the mountain all the time, but you don't need to fall down to the bottom of the valley and have to climb your way back up. You know, you might get at a leveling off point and stay there for a few months, but then you continue to climb up. But if you fall all the way down, it's a long climb back to the top. And I've met a lot of people. You know, I've campaigned, this will be my third round, and when you get out here and knock on doors, you get to meet a lot of interesting people. We have a lot of good people in our city. We have a lot of people that cares about this city. And you got to be able to communicate with them and talk to them. Don't be afraid to give them your phone number, and don't be afraid to talk to them when they call. You got to communicate, and you got to listen to what they want. It's their town, it's not our town. We're just managing it for them. And I think my experience the last 6 years definitely gives me an edge. And I'd appreciate you vote when you get 18. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Solutions of Success. Don't forget to vote. Early voting starts next Monday. And of course, regular election day is November the 3rd. We'd like to thank all these young people for all their excellent questions. Thank you to the candidates for their time. And again, thank you so much for watching. Good night.
you